So Na'Vi has won the third season of the Intel Grand Slam, a competition run in partnership with ESL, where they take their events, which included the DreamHack events for this season, and basically they have a set number of events, and within a span of, I forget how many it is now, it was 10 in the past, I believe, from whenever you win your first event, you have X amount of other chances to get to 4 wins. If you get to 4 wins, you get the $1 million. Interesting detail, never gets activated, is when you're on 3 wins, if someone else in the final beats you, they get $100,000 just to like deny you as like a sort of fucking bounty on your head. Sadly, that's just never actually been able to happen, unfortunately. So by winning ESL Pro League Season 14, Na'Vi wins the third season of the Intel Grand Slam, joining Astralis 2018 and Team Liquid 2019 as former winners of this award. Obvious issue is those 2 teams did their wins 100% offline, whereas ESL Pro League Season 14 was online, so was the DreamHack Masters that Na'Vi won. With that said, at least Na'Vi was the team that won and did have actually 2 LAN tournaments, major prestigious ones, admittedly with no crowd for the playoffs, in as much as they won IEM Katowice 2020, that was still included, and IEM Cologne from this year. So it's not as bad, for example, as if Gambit had won it and had 0 LAN titles, and it was just essentially for them a totally online award, which would make it like, well, isn't that kind of bullshit? They join Astralis and Team Liquid, 2 very, very good LAN teams. Now, Na'Vi specifically winning is pretty appropriate for this period in time. They're the best team in the world. They were the second best team even when Gambit was around, quite frankly, not least because by virtue of the fact they were one of the only teams that could beat Gambit, and also Heroic was just shit in the bed and G2 just can't win tournaments, as I've pointed out previously. They also did win the biggest LAN of the period, which was IEM Cologne. Katowice fucking ages ago at this point in time, and it was technically just as we were going into the online era, so it doesn't feel quite the same. They have the best player in the world. Again, all the storylines are lining up. They've got Simple. Now listen, for Simple, this is actually a pretty significant award to win because he hasn't won a major yet, but there hasn't been a major since the autumn of 2019. So actually, this is the best, the most prestigious accomplishment he could actually have won during this time period. He also gets $200,000 added to his career winnings, which puts him actually, interestingly enough, already up to the 6th highest winner of all time in CSGO. Pretty appropriate. He's like the only one in there from his region, basically. That is also now up to the 79th most prize money won in the history of esports. If you're wondering how there's 78 people above that, it's because there's all those TIs in Dota 2, and that's basically who dominates the list. Now, when you consider Katowice and Cologne were part of this particular run, it's very prestigious to win it in that sense. I actually think having won Katowice and Cologne is a pretty underrated aspect to Simple's career because it was unfortunately during this online period, so people forget, like, those are the big events. Remember, in 1.6 we didn't have majors, so those would have been what we called the majors. When we say Forest and Neo won majors, we're talking about the biggest LAN events. So Cologne, Katowice, they would be right there in the mix, of course. He'd already won obviously a previous Cologne in 2018 when they beat Astralis, won some of the smaller events that were still prestigious like ESL New York and DreamHack Masters and stuff. So actually I think people haven't noticed because everything's just eyes on the prize of the major for Simple. He's got to win the major because he's the GOAT player. I think people haven't noticed he's creeping up there in the other career accomplishments you can add. Like people, there's not that many people in the history of CSGO have won as many Katowices and Colognes as Simple has actually. Go look up the numbers, you'll be surprised how some of the legends you're thinking of have only won it a couple of times. There's only a few people ahead of him, basically. Now, in terms of the Grand Slam concept being online, I hate that. I just hate everything about it. I personally would have taken it. Once I knew it was this online period, I would have just renamed the award for this particular season, and I would wait to call it again just the Intel Grand Slam until you can actually go offline, because I do think it actually makes this the most whack of all the fucking Grand Slams to have won. Yeah, sure, you still want it to exist. It's cool as $1 million. It's cool as this narrative building element to it around the ESL circuit, which overall is the best circuit in the game still. Now, I get all of that. The problem is, like, first of all, I mean, it's just not going to ever be as important that some of the matches are online that you could technically have won the whole thing online. I'll also just say, as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of sad that no one ever is able to fucking deny anyone and actually enable that mechanic. Like, it's a good concept, the mechanic, but it's just never really never worked out. No one's ever really come that close, have they? I mean, in theory, this was a very close final, but even so, it just never has happened. Now, the problem is this. Na'Vi won it and sort of saved it because they won 2 LAN events. Imagine if Gambit or Heroic had won and all of their victories had been online. When there is zero proof that they could actually win a big offline tournament. Now, Gambit looked close at the last one, but Heroic's shown me nothing to suggest they would win a big offline tournament. So, in my opinion, having it be online, especially if any of those teams had won, would absolutely have fucked up the prestige of the award historically. Because now you could have other teams that win it when it's LAN again, and then they'd be like, and then there's this team that just won online and never did anything offline. Like, that just fucking sucks to me. Because the premise of the Grand Slam, I think, is a great concept. As long as ESL still has the best circuit, then in my opinion, it's an award that it's not more prestigious than winning a major, but it's harder than winning majors. So it's a very interesting accomplishment and career accomplishment that teams and great players can add to their resume potentially. So I want the list to be the greatest teams that ever played. Like, I think it's actually quite cool that even though Team Liquid didn't win a major, they only had a crack at one, unfortunately, in that particular time period. I mean, technically two if you count Katowice just before their run. But the fact that they won the Grand Slam and in such epic fashion shows you how dominant they are. If that wasn't there, you could remember if you're from that era, but someone's going to have to say, how did they win the Grand Slam? They never won a major, did they? And it opens the door to their story. So the problem I have is this. You need to have, in my opinion, for this Grand Slam and any future ones that have online elements, very clear, specific markers to show which events are offline and which are online. I might even add it in that if you're going to have like 2 or 3 LAN events involved in it, make it so you have to win at least 1 LAN event. How about that as a caveat? Wouldn't that make it better? The problem is, you have to understand, ESL aren't going to do these things because ESL doesn't give a fuck about any of that. They just care that someone won it. They care that they can just use this all for marketing and PR, and hopefully this all helps MTG, their parent company, in the stock price, and then it's not as bad that they're losing all this fucking money. The problem is esports is just a massive marketing exercise to these sorts of wankers. It ain't about greatness and excellence and aspire to like the highest possible accomplishments and then celebrate who does. If you know ESL and you know the kinds of people who work at ESL, the dream of fucking Carmack is that like basically this kind of an award is won in any context, could be online in the most bollocks way of all time, by a Polish woman would be his dream demographic, against perhaps a Korean or something fucked up like that. I mean, you could even add in obviously this whole element that he'd even rather it was a more tinier niche demographic that in that case could play politically and everything. So that's enough said about ESL on that one, right? Even when they have a bloody functional monopoly, what the fuck do they do with it, right? Exactly. As if we want you guys as our commissars in esports. So it is cool that we had a season of this. It's definitely cool that the best team won, and not only the best team, but the team that was able to win the 2 big LAN events. It's cool for Simple's career, but it certainly isn't as cool as if it had been a totally LAN award like the old days. And I'd rather that they didn't really just slot Na'Vi in at this point in time, even though they probably do. Overall, I'd say deserve to get this particular position. It ain't the same as winning 4 LANs, and especially not with all the other LANs that were missing, and therefore chances for there to be LANs denied and all the rest of that jazz.
What's up, guys? It's DK. Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel. Why are you even here, though? Didn't you know Ginger Man bad?
This video was kindly supported by Kris with a K, Lager15, Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Skaparen, Travis Goff, Zack Schmidt, Adam Ochs, Alexander Rao, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Kris, ErikHillestad, Hades, Jdubs, Jensen Goh, John Shelton, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and special thanks go out to both Jerky's Minion and DZL. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for some of my content? Want to ask me a question in one of those video AMAs? Do you want teasers? Who's going to be the guests on my next interviews? Do you want to take part in a lengthy esports discussion with me? Well, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.